Did you ever want to start at one coast and travel across America until you reach the other coast? This is the Atlantic Ocean where I started. I took a train all the way to the Pacific and back again, twice. This is my journey across America. My local subway was the first mile of track that I traveled. I'm heading to South Station in Boston to catch Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited to Chicago. From there, I'll take the Southwest Chief, the Coast Starlight, California Zephyr, Coast Starlight again, the Empire Builder, and finally the Lakeshore Limited back to Boston. The last mile of track will be the same as the first. This is South Station where I'll board the first Amtrak train. I travel this subway all the time, but on this day it feels different. I won't be back for a while, and when I do return, I'll have traveled through 23 states. Amtrak trains are upstairs, and I can't wait to get up there. I've waited a long time for this trip. I'm ready to go. South Station is the first of many historic train stations I'll pass through. Opened in 1899 and renovated in the 80s, it's not the biggest, but it's one of the best. Just aboard the Lakeshore Limited to Chicago. I'll be on this train for the next 24 hours. This is coach class. So what's it like to travel long distance by train? Well, it's not about getting from point A to point B. You take a plane for that. It's an adventure. And my 10,000-mile adventure is about to begin. Off to see America. Before I return to South Station, I'll see America's Midwest and mile after mile of farms, from Ohio to Indiana to Illinois. I'll travel through Kansas and along the Santa Fe Trail before reaching the great American Southwest. After that, I'll see Southern California and the Pacific Ocean. The Coast Starlight will bring me to within feet of the Pacific. I should reach the Pacific in 3 days. 3 days on the rail, coast to coast. Then I'll stop for a few days in Santa Barbara where the mountains meet the ocean. Would I travel 3,000 miles to watch the sunset over the Pacific? Yes, I would. In between trains, I'll spend a few hours in Chicago, but I won't just get to see big cities. I'll see small towns, hundreds of small towns, and thousands of backyards, all across America. Everyday America. And that's just the westbound leg of my trip. On the return, I'll pass through the Sierra Nevadas and the heart of the Rockies on Amtrak's California Zephyr. The California Zephyr does not disappoint. I'll also see the Pacific Northwest before heading east through Glacier National Park in Montana. Today, we'll travel through the Berkshires in western Massachusetts before reaching Albany, New York, just after sundown. Tonight, I'll hopscotch across New York State, stopping in Schenectady, Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, and finally Buffalo at midnight. Goodbye, Boston. As we head out of the city, we'll pass through the Fenway area of Boston. If you're a baseball fan, this is the backside of Fenway Park, or should I say Fenway's backyard. When you fly across America, you get to see America's roof from a distance. When you drive across on the interstate, you see America's front yard. Mostly neat, generic office parks, chain hotels, restaurants, city skylines that have a certain similarity from a distance. It really doesn't vary much from one state to the next, from one highway to the next. But when you take the train, you get to see America's backyard. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's downright junky, sometimes it's riddled with ugly graffiti, but there's always something to see. That's the Massachusetts Turnpike, also known as the Mass Pike. The Lakeshore Limited follows a similar path to the Mass Pike, all the way out to the New York State line. We'll catch up with it again in the Berkshires when we pass under the Mass Pike Bridge in Westfield. We're heading into the western suburbs of Boston now and getting up to speed. Full speed westbound. This is the Newton-Wellesley area, and that Star Market is built right over the Mass Pike. Go figure. So what's long-distance train travel like? Well, first, I always travel in coach class. But take a look at these coach seats. Pretty roomy, right? I'm not very tall, so that makes it even roomier for me. On this part of the trip, the train is pretty empty. More people will get on further down the line, but for now it's peaceful and quiet, which is perfect for watching the late October foliage outside the window. We're only about 30 minutes outside of Boston now, heading for Framingham and Worcester, so I still need to get my sea legs. The train can be pretty bouncy at times, or nice and smooth, depending on the condition of the track and how fast we're going. Walking from car to car, or even to the restroom, can make you feel like you're in your third glass of wine, until you get your sea legs, that is. Then walking on the train becomes second nature. I won't be doing too much walking on the train right now though, because there are only 2 coach cars, a sleeper and a cafe car. And I won't be going to the cafe car before Albany. In Albany, the Lakeshore Limited number 449 from Boston meets up with the Lakeshore Limited number 49 from New York, and they're joined together for the rest of the trip to Chicago. The combined train will then have at least 6 coaches, plus the cafe, dining, and sleeper cars. Later tonight, I'll head up to the cafe car for a cup of coffee, and I'll take a walk through all of the coaches. I should have my sea legs by then. We're about 2 hours out of Boston now. This is Springfield, the 3rd largest city in Massachusetts. We stopped here for about 10 minutes, and I stepped off for some fresh air. Not every stop is a fresh air stop where you can get off and stretch your legs or grab a smoke. In fact, most stops take just a few minutes, just long enough for people to get off and on, and then all aboard. Yes, they do give the all aboard warning and sometimes a whistle too, and then we're on our way again, all in a matter of minutes. Off we go, over the Connecticut River. That's the Memorial Bridge over there, built in 1922. The Connecticut River starts at the Quebec-U.S. border and flows southward for about 400 miles. It cuts across Massachusetts and right into Connecticut, then runs through Hartford before it empties into Long Island Sound. After Springfield, we head into the Berkshires. So how do I sleep on the train, and is it really possible to get a good night's sleep in coach? Well, first, I try not to do too much sleeping on the train because, like the song says, I don't want to miss a thing. Nothing out that window is too mundane to ignore, and I want to absorb it all. Anyway, in the first night of a trip, I really don't sleep too well. The seats recline, and they have a pop-up footrest, so it's comfortable enough, but I sleep very lightly in the first night out. I nod off a bit, wake up, nod off again, half awake, half asleep, all through the night. Tonight, I'll get enough sleep to keep me going, and that's all I really need. Tomorrow night, I'll be on the Southwest Chief in a double-decker coach car. Same coach seats as the Lakeshore Limited, but it just feels a little bigger. I sleep much better on night 2, and by night 3, that little coach seat is my home away from home. Kinda cozy. Look at that rock. Imagine what it was like to blast through that rock in the 1830s when they built this rail line between Boston and Albany. It must have been brutal work back then, but they built something that's still in use almost 200 years later. I wonder what we've built that will still be useful 200 years from now. Now this is nice. Any wonder why I love riding the rail? Rural Massachusetts in late October. I like it. When people think of Massachusetts, rural usually doesn't come to mind. But out here in the Berkshires, the Bay State has a tranquil, small-town feel to it. Of all the backyards I'll see across America, these are some of my favorites. Maybe it's because this is my home state and fall is my favorite time of year, but it sure looks good down there. I can almost smell the wood fire from that chimney. This will be a solo adventure across America. I'm traveling alone, but that gives me more time to focus on where I am and what's out my window. We're still in Massachusetts, my home state, so even though I don't get out to Western Mass too often, New England is still quite familiar to me. And this view, these beautiful hills in Western Mass, it makes me a little nostalgic. This is the Lakeshore Limited number 448 from Albany to Boston. This stretch of rail that we're on is a single track, so we've pulled off to a siding to let the 448 pass. On to Albany. So what's it like on the train at night? Well, you can't see as much out the window at night as you can in the day, but there's still plenty to see. The small towns and big cities, the rail yards and highways, and the station stops all through the night. At every station, no matter how late at night, no matter how small the town, there's always someone waiting there for us to arrive, waiting to start their own adventure. That's the Empire State Plaza in Albany off in the distance. It's the capital of New York State. It won't be long now before we arrive in Albany Station and wait for the number 49 to join us from New York City.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes, we'll be arriving at Albany Rensselaer. Albany Rensselaer will be our station stop in just a few minutes. Folks, when we get into Albany Rensselaer, this train will be there until 7:05. Repeat, 7:05. This train will leave. We'll sit in the Albany Rensselaer station and wait for its sister train to meet you out of New York. At that time, the sleeper will be put on. Again, this train does not leave until 7:05. Ladies and gentlemen, you can feel free to step outside, grab some fresh air, or go upstairs to the station. There's a store and a small restaurant. The last boarding call to return back to the train will be around approximately 6:45. So make sure you listen to that because again, the train leaves at 7:05. Thank you.
So here I am in Albany, sundown already. The first leg of the trip is behind me. It seems like I just walked out the door. I'm still not too far from home, but by sunrise tomorrow, I'll be out in the farms of the Midwest and in Chicago by noon. I'm 200 miles down and thousands more to go.